Why is the hookup culture existing
Okay,
in
so
today's dating climate?
is a very layered question, right?
Hmm.
How much time do you have?
We can
We could
go
be
however
here.
long you want to go.
Okay, so I would say that hookup culture has been taking place for a while now, well before our generation, right? So originating from the 1950s and then certainly the 60s and 70s when women started demanding greater sexual freedom, right? But I would also say that the rise of social media apps has certainly perpetuated hookup culture because it's removed so many barriers and hooking up is so much faster and within anyone's reach now. We hear about it all the time, the gamification of love. With all the addictive game like features each of the apps have, it's no surprise people are getting hooked on hookup culture. No pun intended. I also feel like the ease of access means that many people in modern dating culture approach dating the same way they approach fast food or fast fashion. They want it now, and once they've had it, they're on to the next. So the exchange is not intended to last a long time or be a quality experience, in my experience. I just also think that people's mindset towards sex and dating has shifted so much. What used to be taboo or have all these stigmas surrounding it are becoming more and more normalized. So, sex and pleasure are no longer dirty words, and it's no longer expected that you only seek out one person to meet both of those needs.
Jesus, that was a mouthful. There's a lot to unpack there.
Should I give you a
Now,
minute to digest it?
no, no, we digest very well. There's a lot that you said there, and I feel like when we get into this conversation space about the hookup culture, you
Mm-hmm.
see it and you echo to the things of social media. And I
Mm.
feel like as content creators, we're all easily accessible. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna play both sides of the coin here. I'm gonna start
Right.
with men. I feel
Okay.
like they say, from when you look from masculinity, being a high value man, you gotta have this, you gotta have that, all these different things, right? Is one thing. And you stand out. But I don't see men getting the same pre selection as you would see the reverse of the coin when it comes to females, right?
Right.
So females on the other end have the tendency, and I believe they're easily have the accessible ability through social media and through the lens to then be able to gravitate that attention.
Mm-hmm.
Where, let's just say this, when you have like 20 people knocking on your door,
Mm.
you're going to be more prone
Mm.
to then maybe want to meet up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be then more prone to have text message conversations, going out for dinners, partying with each other, sleeping with each other, hanging out with each other in the household and things like that. And I don't think it's necessarily the same for men because I feel like men have to look at the way that they're what they're up against. You know what I mean? That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's reminding me of a statistic that I heard about a few years back that like 90% of women are attracted to the top 20% of men, which means that 80% of men don't have access to 90% of women when it comes to online dating. Does that make sense the way I said it? So
You said
in
it
terms,
such a great way.
so if we're talking about supply and demand, yeah, there's an issue there for men in terms of they have a lot less options. But that being said, I still think there is an abundance mentality taking place here. So men are still treating women like an option because they still have access to these apps that are sort of teasing them with all of these options. So there are a lot of women out there who, yes, they might have more options, but they're looking for commitment, whereas they're being treated like an option in return.
Okay, I'm gonna bite back this a little bit. I'm gonna bite
Okay,
back this a little bit.
love
So you don't
this.
think women don't treat men like an option to some degree?
Absolutely. I think that the way our current culture is lends it to both ways, for sure. I
Hmm.
definitely, I work with a lot of men, I coach a lot of men. Yes, a lot of men are being treated like an option. But I would say that there, in my experience as a woman who is on the dating apps and also working with both men and women, I would say that women struggle more when it comes to commitment. Perhaps men struggle more when it comes to being noticed. But we're talking about two different things here.
Okay, so I'll say this in a way because I feel like the way that we started off, and I'm looking at the time, we're 7 minutes in, and I'm like, okay, she doesn't have a mainstream type of attitude. I think you have more of the far right. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And with the far right means I feel like you see both sides of the coin for what it is. Agree?
I'd hope so, yeah.
So, yeah, so what I'm gathering here is that with what you're saying about men have more options, women have more options, and things like that. I would love to present this and say is how are women supposed to be more devoted if they're not socially aware of what's in front of them? Because you always hear women say, "Oh, well, I can't find that nice guy. The nice guy is not available." But I truly believe you guys have nice guys in front of you, but the vetting option is not the most secure. Does that make sense?
I mean, we're getting deep here because you're talking about people's unconscious
Mm-hmm.
attractions, right? And that it goes back to that statistic we were talking about, right? 90% of women want the top 20%. That doesn't necessarily mean that that top 20% are what's best for them. It just means that that's what they're attracted to. And that comes down to societal conditioning. That comes about down to expectations, which also, where are those expectations coming from? That necessarily doesn't have anything to do with what's compatible with us or what's right for us or what's going to serve us best long term. And this is why I see so many people struggle to find their person in life, right? And, it comes down to trial and error. A lot of broken hearts. You got to kiss a lot of frogs to reevaluate what is actually aligned with you. You might think you want the guy who makes a lot of money and drives the flashy car, but maybe you're most suited to an introvert, right? Who just wants to stay at home and read books with you. This is why dating is so important. And the process, you should take time with the process to really identify and qualify people.
You said, man, wow. Wow. You said it. You just woke it up. And I think that's the thing. You know what I mean? I feel like the vanity metrics thing is not always a good play. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
We're busy individuals, right? We're busy individuals. We get it. So it's like we want people that are in our own wheelhouse that understand what we do, right? Understand what we bring to the table, know that we may be working a 9 to 5, we're doing the content creation, we're doing all these things. We're mentoring, we're coaching, right? But when it comes to our time, we want you to be there for all the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons, Because when we're in the deep in the trenches and we're building our platforms, we're building our business, there's going to be rewards that are going to be for both people to have access to. You know what I mean? Could be traveling. Could be, hey, you pay for this trip this time, I pay for the trip next time. What are we doing and things like that. So it's like a lot of what I see, a lot of people want to go with the money first, but not realize that they have you'd have to have the underline with the magnitude of the mentality also too. And I don't think that's what's happening in dating. A lot of people are not being intentional with that.
Absolutely not. I feel like most people don't date intentionally. That's the problem. They fall into situations that aren't necessarily right for them or gravitate towards people that aren't necessarily good for them.
Now, do you think that has to deal with past experiences and not necessarily healing? And the reason why I say this is actually, before we started the recording of this, I went for a walk. Just to clear my mind, right? Work 9 to 5, do all that stuff. I said, listen, I got to come in this. It's a nightcap episode. And one of the biggest things I thought about as I'm walking, I said, is a lot of people claim, quote unquote, they've been through X and O's in relationships, men, women.
They've been through what?
There's a lot of traumatic experience. They've been through like X and O's. So
Okay.
like issues with different men, issues with different women. And let's just say traumatic experiences, right? I'm all for trauma, healing. I'm all for going out there, healing. But the thing is, they still project it maybe because they haven't fully healed, right? And then they say that they're ready. They're ready to be dating. They're ready to meet that man, ready to meet that woman. when they know that they're not even supposed to be on these dating apps yet, because they still have those hindering beliefs. They're not fully healed. They say, oh, listen, I've been through the traumatic experiences. I've been through the coaches. I've been through this. I'm not knocking it. But if that's the case and you're being through all that, you can't be on these dating apps. You can't be wanting to date openly healed people. What do you got to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly the type of work that I do with my clients day in and day out. And I believe that sometimes people really do think that they're ready to date. Whereas there's another group of people that is almost using dating as a crutch because they don't want to focus on themselves. They don't want to work on themselves. They want a distraction. And there's a lot of people that fall into that category. But then there's also a lot of people who don't recognize how deep their relationship patterning runs, right? So they think they're healed, but then they don't realize that, oh, in that moment, they got an abandonment wound and that was triggered. And then they project that onto the relationship, whether it's warranted or not. Most people don't even realize they've got an abandonment wound. Most people don't even realize they need to do inner child work, right? And then they come to me and then they're like, why do I keep attracting the wrong person? And it's like, because you're attracted to what's familiar, but what's familiar isn't safe because your mom or your dad abandoned you when you were a kid. And now you don't realize that every relationship you're attracted to, you're basically repeating history and they're leaving you the same way your caregiver did, right? So it's like people just aren't aware. And so my job is to bring the unconscious into their awareness so that they can realize, okay, I'm ready to date, but I didn't realize I had to change all of these patterns so that I could start responding from a place of worth instead of my wounding.
Well said. Well said. So let's go into the standards aspect.
Right.
How do you're a woman? You say that you've been on the dating apps.
Right.
I use dating apps as a social experience because it's pretty interesting that's out there.
Absolutely.
And I can always pick on a lot of what's going on. And the reason why I can pick up is that there's a lot of people that are using the same recycled verbiage throughout their dating, right? And if you're truly healed and you're truly in tune with yourself, you can spot the red flags within early text message conversations. If somebody's leading with sex, to all the people that want to lead with that, that's on them. Then you have the ones that don't lead with sex and they want to actually have genuine, open conversations. Some people then get intimidated by that because they're like, they're going deep, right? So setting those realistic expectations with dating. Let's start with women first. How can that happen?
How can they set realistic expectations? Okay. First and foremost, don't believe the stuff that are in the books we read, the movies we watch, the music we listen to, or the pressures that you experience from your friends and family, right? Don't compare what's going on in your life to what's taking place on Instagram, right? That is perpetuating the curse of comparison. Instead, get really familiar with what your core values are, right? What is aligned with you? Set some healthy boundaries around that, what it looks like. And then you'll be able to set realistic expectations, that are actually reflect who you are and what you're looking for and not what you've been told to look for or expect in a relationship, right? Just because you see somebody flying their girlfriend first class around the world on Instagram doesn't mean that they're happy or that's even what you need to feel happy in a relationship, right? That certainly wouldn't make me happy. So ask yourself, what are you looking for? What are you truly looking for? Not what do you think you should be looking for, right? And also, I go back to what I said about trial and error. Like, I had to date a lot in my 20s to realize that nice dinners and expensive trips around the world don't make me happy. Things like loyalty, consistency, integrity, honesty, the stuff you can't buy in life makes me happy, right? But I needed life experience to reevaluate my values. So my recommendation or my advice would be get out there to figure out who you are and what makes you happy and then act accordingly.
Well said. And that's true. Anybody can fly first class, honestly. If you got the money, anybody can fly
Work
first
hard
class.
enough, you can, yeah. Maybe not immediately,
Right?
but one
Anybody
day.
can. Exactly. Anybody can go to these destinations, Turks and Caicos, Cancun, Mexico, I don't know, whatever they want to do. Greece is the new version of Turks and Caicos now, right? So it's like that's what people are doing.
Yeah.
If you earn it, you save money, you do what you need to do, you can have at that any given point in time. So I like what you say there. So let me now tackle men, right? And men, I've always said, is they gotta have something called dick discipline, and they don't. They really don't. And I see it out there, and then I don't call out. How do I say this? I don't call out the guys in my inner circle because I'm not gonna be man bashing here. That's not what it's about. But have some dick discipline. That doesn't mean every single time you see it means go, means you go. Sometimes there's an amber alert, and sometimes you got to slow it down, right? Because eventually your PP gonna fall off, and it is what it is, right? That's the number one thing. They don't have dick discipline. I don't see it. Like, you got to be able to know how to shut off that valve. I know a lot of men hear this, and they're like, who does he think he is? Oh, he's some beta or whatever. No, you have to have some discipline, right? The same thing about flexible eating. You want to lose weight? Switch it up to flexible eating, right? You want to feel fit? You got to go to the gym. You got to put the work in, put the reps in. Shut off the dick. Shut off the dick. Get rid of it. You know what I mean? Chill for a sec. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. If you want to have intention. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But a lot of men don't know how to have a thing called dick discipline. So let's speak to the men, because you coach men, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So let's speak to the men who don't have dick discipline. Is that what you want me to do right now? The guys who
need to have standards.
Right. Okay, so are you suggesting that the people who sleep around don't necessarily have standards? Or
Oh, 100% I can say that. I can say that. I 100% will say that. If you sleep around, you do not have standards. You don't. And if that's going to be the case, then guess what? Maybe open up a paywall and create an OnlyFans and make some money off of it, if that's what you really want to do. I'll be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying. In my experience working with men who sleep around, oftentimes I feel like they are seeking external validation, right? So they are looking to somebody else to make them feel good about themselves. So there is an issue with their self-worth, right? Or sense of self. But that being said, and you use the word intention, I think it comes back to intentions. What are your dating intentions, right? If you just want to have fun and get laid, that's fine. Honor the stage that you're in. But also recognize that, phases are something that you're meant to go through, right? Unless, of course, you're Leonardo DiCaprio. In which case, be honest about that too. You just want to date around and have fun with young women for the rest of your life. Whatever makes you happy, I have no issue with it. But if you're just sleeping around because you only feel happy within yourself, so long as somebody is validating you, then, I would suggest looking within and asking yourself, why is that? What is it about you that needs somebody else to validate you? Why can't you validate yourself? Why aren't you happy on your own? What is holding you back from forming true intimacy and connection with just one person? What are you afraid of? What's the limiting belief behind that, right? But a lot of people don't want to go there. They look for a quick fix, instant gratification. So they get caught in this cycle of just sleeping around, right? Until they get sick of it, But that's why I always say, honor the phase you're in, but just remember that phases are things that you're meant to go through. So you're inevitably going to have to face this about yourself.
Absolutely. No, well said. And I think that in traditional views, right, the biggest thing you hear is that men are supposed to have, more than one woman, things like that. And I think people actually take that and they roll with it. Yes, that is true. But if you want to find something of substance, right, and I'm talking to the people that are listening to this that want substance. I know I got to that little phrase of what I said about having dick discipline. Probably people shut off the show, and it is what it is. It doesn't matter to me. But you want substance out there, you have to start holding yourself accountable. And that's with your actions. That's about what you do when you get up and when you go to bed, right? I always say is you can't be behind the trenches and be, thinking you're doing this and doing that, but then in public you're a failure. You know what I mean? Because that name is hard to come by. So that's just how it is.
Yeah. But I do love what you are saying, because I do think men do have this, pressure, societal pressure to appear like they are, have endless options, right? And it's like makes them less of a man if they don't explore those options. But I do see that later in life, late 20s, early 30s, certainly late 30s, the real flex is in finding a life partner. But the problem is they don't have the tools or experience to know how to be in a healthy relationship, So they just settle for the first person they can find, and then they wake up 5, 10 years into their marriage and don't know why they're miserable, right? It's because they weren't taught how to be in touch with their emotions, how to communicate, how to be a good partner, right? So 100% I agree with you. There is definitely pressure on men to sort of, what was the saying that you have? The dick.
Dick discipline. Dick
Yeah.
discipline.
Yeah. To not explore
Discipline.
dick discipline for this exact reason, right?
And I think that once you know how to do that, that's when you'll start attracting the right things,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people say manifestation. Manifestation is a buzzword for 2021, so I don't really use it anymore. It comes up in talking points. It happens. The same thing as pivot. So it's like, have some discipline in what it is you believe in, right? Be single. It's okay to be single. It's okay to, yes, you can be on dating apps and you could be kind of just surveying and just, look at it from this. A dating app is like going to college and you're trying to be drafted by that pro sports team that you know that you're good at. You know what I mean? So it's like, how are you going to get drafted? You have to go through the trenches and things like that.
Totally. Gotta
And
pay
then when
it
you're
to.
dating, see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, see what's going on in dating. Just ask the right questions. When you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. But there's a
Totally.
lot of people that like to play a lot of stupid games, and then they win stupid prizes at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's so true. But I like what you're saying because there is so much strength in being single, in being selective, and also in dating yourself. Before you date anybody else, date yourself. Get to know yourself, right? There's nothing worse than people who look to other people to fill a void within themselves, right? Or get lost in these codependent dynamics, relationship dynamics, because they don't know who they are anymore. So they look to people to complete them instead of complement who they are and their lives. So, yeah, spend some time on your own, date yourself, and then take time to date other people. Don't be in a rush to settle down, right? Pace yourself. There's strength in that.
Well said. And I'll even add on to what you just said there is that date yourself, go to dinners by yourself. I used to thought
Yes.
that was weird back in my early 20s, mid 20s. Go to a movie by yourself. Go to a movie theater. Get your meat popcorn, your meat drink, your meat candy, and sit in the movie theater,
Yeah.
right? You really start finding that inner connection with yourself, right? And if more people do things by themselves, they would see a more of a reward because then you have
Absolutely.
that center of grounding. You get what I mean? But that's like grown up talk we talking. I don't know. Some of the people that are in their later 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, they still like children.
No,
They're
it's
still
so
out here
true.
like Peter Pan looking for they're still like Peter Pan looking for the Tinkerbell. Like what's going on?
It's so true what you're saying because I see this all the time with my clients, right? They break up with their partners. And so I go, okay, well, now we need to redirect your focus back onto yourself. What do you like to do in your spare time? I can't tell you how many of my clients don't know the answer to that. And so I agree with you. Spend time on your own, romance yourself, get comfortable being on your own, figure out what drives you, what your interests and passions look like. Stop turning to people to fill your time, right? We're social creatures, so we seek connection in others. That's fine. But the most constant relationship you're ever going to have in your life is the one you have with yourself. So better be a good one, right?
Well said. Well said. Well said. So let's get into this. The dreaded Casper, the friendly ghost,
Oh, yes.
Ghostbusters,
Yeah.
all the ghosts, 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 ghosts. I feel like, when we were kids, they
Yeah.
had the ghosts that were friendly,
Yeah.
but now we're dealing with the ghosts that are not so friendly.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about ghosting. Why does it happen more often than none?
Listen, I say it all the time. I have experienced it myself. I have been guilty of it. I'm not proud of it, but I think ghosting exists for the same reasons that I think hookup culture exists. The gamification and commercialization of love has meant that people take dating less seriously. It also means that there are an increased number of options, which has given many singles this false sense of abundance that I was talking about before. So as soon as they are fulfilled or see something they don't like, they're on to the next. And the anonymity of apps, or the fact that the communication takes place online, has meant that a lot of people have become desensitized, and they think they can get away with behavior that they wouldn't necessarily do offline or in person. And then I think there has been a shift towards a lack of care, but also a lack of accountability. And even though a lot of people don't like it, they're also putting up with it. It's become normalized. And I see this in my clients all the time. They just accept it. And so what that means is that so long as people are putting up with it, it will continue to take place, right? So there needs to be more consequences for people who behave that way, because there have actually been studies that have proven how detrimental ghosting is for people's mental health, as well as their sense of self-worth. And I actually think it's the Philippines that are currently looking into making ghosting illegal for this exact reason. But I also think that there is a lack of proper education when it comes to communicating feelings, right? We were talking about that in when we were talking about men and how they behave when it comes to dating and online dating and yada, yada, yada. But, you know, it's okay if you don't feel like you have chemistry or a connection with someone. But in my experience, so many people use ghosting as a coping mechanism because, you know, they basically want to avoid any difficult relational dynamics. So, you know, education around the fact that saying no isn't a dirty word. And the fact that the more we are honest about our feelings, the more normalized being honest will become, if that makes sense.
No, well said. Well said. And I feel like, so this is kind of where maybe I'll hold you accountable a little bit. Did ghosting happen for you? Because I know why I feel like ghosting happens is because people are playing in different sandboxes. Then they find that one particular person, and that because that person is giving them that attention or whatever it is they're looking for, they'll end up ghosting that other person that they may be talking about. Because I feel like now dating is you got to date in volume, right?
Yeah, it's a
If you
numbers game.
date in volume, that's yeah. If you date in volume, you're gonna be able to get the whatever it is you're looking for. And I think people start ghosting the people that
Yeah.
are not giving them what it is that they want, and then they start securing the honeypot
Yeah.
with the people that are giving them what it is. So would you say that's the reason why you ghosted?
Why I personally ghosted,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying because it goes back to the, you know, the way online dating has created this abundance mindset. You know, people just think there are endless options, and then they move on to the better option when they come across it. In my particular instance, I ghosted because I had an avoidant approach to dating at the time, and I didn't recognize it within myself. I actually wasn't ready to date. So when people wanted to meet up, I would disappear. And I didn't have an explanation. It wasn't about them, it was about me. And so it was just easier for me to stop communication altogether. I don't agree with my behavior. I certainly don't excuse it. And I would approach things very differently now. But I actually didn't know what was going on with me at the time. So I didn't even know how to articulate it.
So let me ask you this question: was it because it was a bad breakup?
Um, Again, how much time do you have? Partly
Tell me.
the bad breakup was also completely related to my upbringing. So the bad breakup wouldn't have happened if it wasn't because of my relationship patterning, which originated from my childhood. So yeah, it's all interlinked.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And that's why I asked the question, right? And it's not to pry in your personal life, but to tell people that there's a lot of what's been enlisted when we're born can play out in the past.
Absolutely.
Or sorry, I said that wrong. What's a lot that plays out in the present is because of what happens in the past.
Yeah,
And
I
that's why I
love
always
this.
believe, and
Yeah, yeah.
I go into a lot of spaces, and I say this to friends, I say this to family. You got to make peace with your past because if you don't, it can affect your present,
Oh God,
right?
yeah.
And a lot of folks look at me like I have 18 different heads when I say it. And it's like, when I think about my past growing up, except outside of injuries and like little miscellaneous things that happen in school, I truly believe I've been through enough in my 20s that now when I date, I'm like a Ginsu blade going through butter, right? And what that means is like a lot of things I can see and I may not call out because I see the red flags, right? Maybe I should be that's why I said maybe I should market myself as like a dating coach or something like that. I don't know. But you see a lot of the red flags. And when you see the red flags, you just null and void it, right? It's now topics in the social group. You know what I mean? So when you see the red flags, you identify it and you're like, because, hey, people are not, how do I say this? We're all the same.
Absolutely.
Not much different if you pay attention. You know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah, we're all just dealing with the same stuff. But I love what you're saying because one of my favorite quotes is, if you don't address your childhood trauma, your romantic relationships will. And I always say to my clients, the more hysterical you are, meaning the more, like, the bigger the reaction you have, the more historical, right? So the more hysterical, the more historical. So if something is really affecting you in your romantic relationships, more than likely it is because of something that happened to you earlier on in life. So yeah, you've got to address it. But I love what you're saying as well. You know, part of addressing it is also getting really familiar with what your red, green, and orange flags are, what your deal breakers are, what your non-negotiables are. Because if you don't have that, you just allow anybody to enter your life, right? And that person might not be healthy for you or good for you long term. So you got to get clear on what those things are for you.
Well said. Well said. Listen, because I know you want to go start your day because you're in the future and I'm in the present and things like that. Nicole, it's been a pleasure, and I'm happy that we could do this.
As
At the
am
same
I.
time, I want you to plug your information, and I'm working on something for 2023. So
Okay.
maybe I'll let the cat out the bag eventually, but
Yeah.
we're
I'm
gonna bring you back on.
Oh,
I wanna create this panel type of
right.
conversation that I'm looking to build,
Love
and
that.
you know,
I'm
really
there.
really get into some spaces and stuff. All
Great.
right.
Just tell me when I'm
So
there.
where
Thank you.
yeah, no, for sure. Where can everybody check you out and
Great.
your podcast? Plug all that information and stuff like that.
Okay, yes. Okay, so you can find me on single@30.com, or my Instagram handle is single_at_30. And if you would like to hire me as your coach, you can find me at NicoleColantoni.com. Yeah, but I too have really big news. I'm in the process of doing a rebrand, so stay tuned. And yeah, exciting times ahead. Watch
So
this space.
is that is that like coming attraction? Like is that breaking news? What is that? What's the rebrand about?
Um, I can't give too much away, but the brand has evolved a lot in recent times. So I want to honor its evolution. And like I said, I'm coaching men as well as women now. So I want to go down a bit more of a gender neutral avenue. So stay tuned.
All right. Well, we'll be waiting on this side to see what's going on. So I
You'll be
do
the first to know.
appreciate you, and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Rory.